Hello and welcome to Happy Cells and Souls. My name is Julie Powers and I'm a licensed Zumba instructor and I'm a business partner with the Juice Plus company. And my missions in life are to help people understand that life is better when they're dancing through it and to inspire healthy living around the world. But my expanded mission is to create better health at the cellular level and more joy at the cellular level. And so that brings us to these conversations. I've had the honor of knowing a lot of different people from all different backgrounds my entire life. And what I have found is that it doesn't matter if we share the same views in politics, religion, it doesn't matter, anything. If we just keep our eyes, ears, hearts, and minds open, we can learn from everyone because everyone has a story to share. And I love talking with people who inspire me, who have impacted the world in positive ways, or who just are really interesting people. And so today's conversation is with a young lady that I have known literally since she was conceived, because she grew up across the street from me and went to school with my son. And this is Breslin Rose. And it's just the perfect name for her because she's just sweet as can be. And unfortunately, her computer camera is not capturing the glow around her and her little sweet energy field because it is so dark where her camera is not bringing the light out. So just trust me in knowing that she is just a brilliant light in this world. And so Breslin, I am so happy to talk with you today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So you are a nurse and you have been doing a traveling nurse job for a while now. And so I would love for you to, first of all, just talk about your background in how you decided to go into nursing. What was it that finally made you decide that that was the career you wanted to latch onto and to study? And then transition that from what you were doing as a permanent nurse into the traveling field.
My nursing career for me didn't start in high school. I didn't want to be a nurse in high school. My mom is a physical therapist and my dad is a nurse practitioner, as you know. I was kind of against it because I felt like most of the girls in my high school class were becoming nurses and I just didn't want to go towards that. I didn't want to be one of the normal. So I went for photography, which is another pastime of mine. And then my mom got sick while I was in high school. So I was dealing with doctor's offices, drains and medications that I wasn't familiar with. And that kind of sparked the nurturing side of me that I hadn't found before. So I went to nursing school. After a big failure at Jeffco, I found myself at Missouri Baptist and I went through Gold Card, which is a fantastic program. I graduated around 2 years ago. I started on the neurology floor and that was a very good home for me. And I just have found myself much happier and found that I have a lot of love to give through the nursing field that I don't know that I would have felt before.
Right, because I remember you were really wanting to be a photographer and you were very good at it and you're still very good at it. But whenever you decided to become a nurse, I could see that there was something in your eyes, that little sparkle that was like, you know what, this is me. This is me.
Yes.
And as much as you were trying to fight that, and you weren't open to that being even a possibility for you, because that's what happens when a lot of young people are, like, I don't want to be what my mom and dad are. Right. I don't want to be what everybody else is doing. I want to be my own person. It's okay if what you want to do and what fills up your soul is what a lot of people are doing or have done before, because you get to do it in your own way. And so I can see that the people that you help bedside, are just soaking you up and letting you pour into them. And that's great. And, working with neurology patients can be very challenging. Absolutely. And but can you think of something that was like one of the most important or most impactful things that you might have learned or experienced while you were working on the neurology floor at the hospital?
One would be stroke prevention or recognition. That is simple. It used to be fast, but now it's be fast. So you have balance, your balance would be off. Your eyes you have a glassy tone to them, they might be absent. Facial drooping is a big one. Arms, your arms won't be equal if you raise them up. Speech is going to be slurred, and then time is the most important. I preach that to my patients still to this day, even though I'm not on that unit anymore.
Right.
And that things take time to recover.
Right. And you have to be very patient for that to come back. And I know that from, my husband having a bad fall with a head injury and, having months to recover, and using your mother for physical therapy for all of that recovery and rehab. But he's recovered now. So what was it that made you consider going into the traveling nurse field? I mean, I know that you've done all of this during the COVID pandemic, and a lot of hospitals were looking for additional help. And it was just the whole medical side of things was getting stretched thin. And it's still stretched thin because a lot of people have left the profession. But tell me what made you want to go into the traveling part of it instead of just staying where you were?
I think that my brain hasn't been able to slow down since nursing school. Nursing school ramped it up, and it's like caffeine is in my brain from now on. I can't get it out. So I have a very quick turnaround with jobs where I end up feeling bored. Neurology was starting to feel like a rhythm, like I knew everything at this point. And of course, it's neurology, so you don't know everything, but I was tired of nights. I was exhausted from not getting good food, not being able to have the energy. So I was just over that floor at the time. And one of my very best friends said that she was going to travel over the summer. And I had reached a point where I had no significant ties other than my family back to Missouri. Nothing to keep me here. So she said she's going, and I said, I'm going too.
Well, that was great that you were able to pair up with your friend. And I know that you guys had a couple of different options that were presented to you, but you ended up in South Carolina.
Yes.
And how big of a hospital was it?
This was, I don't know the exact bed size, but if you're looking in terms of hospitals, there's Big Barnes, there's Missouri Baptist, and there's Big Mercy. This hospital in South Carolina was the size of Big Mercy. It's a
big hospital, a big hospital. And so what floor did you end up working on at the first assignment in South Carolina?
I was on MSU. It's a medical step down unit right out of the ICU.
All right, very good. And so in my mind, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to being a traveling nurse because, okay, let's talk about the disadvantages first, because we always want to end on the upside, right?
Yeah.
So disadvantages, you're away from home. You can get homesick.
Yes.
Second is you don't always have a say in where you end up, right? And what floor you're on, what your schedule is going to be. They can even cancel your contract once you're there. Housing, like sometimes depending on where you're going, you may not even have a clue what your housing really is going to look like. You just have to sort of sign your name on a document for a short-term lease that it was usually 6 months or so.
They're hard to find.
Yeah, and it's hard to find that. So you are very limited, and you're just like hoping that it's a reasonable place to live. And working in multiple states is kind of a tax issue sometimes. It can be a hassle, not, of course it can all be resolved. It's a tax issue. You're in an unfamiliar environment, while that includes not just where you're living, but in the hospital itself. You have to learn all new computers, all new processes. You're always the new kid on the block. You don't know all the answers. And so those are some of the disadvantages. Are there any others that came up while you were there that you didn't even think about?
I think it's that they're so short-staffed that the ratio should be less than what they are. So in this case, this ratio was a 3-to-1, but your patients were so sick that it truly needs to be a 2-to-1, like an ICU. And the current place that I'm at is a 5-to-1, but it needs to be a 4 or a 3-to-1.
Wow. Yeah. So they really need more nurses.
They do.
Really need more nurses. But the good side, right? The good
Yeah.
side is you get to have an adventure. While you're
Absolutely.
young, you don't have these ties. I do have some friends who are married with children who are doing the traveling nurse thing strictly because they feel led to do that and to help fill in some gaps in other areas and rural areas, especially across the country, but also financially because you get paid a lot more to be a traveling nurse.
Yes.
And, you know, with the housing stipend and your hourly pay. And you get to make new friends.
Yes.
If you can actually make new friends.
Yes.
Because I would think that that would be a little bit of a challenge because you're working a lot, you don't know people, you don't even know where to go to meet people, and then
Right.
your assignment's over and you're coming back home.
Correct.
So tell us about your experience in South Carolina, and then you went to Texas,
Yes.
to Fort Worth, Dallas area, and you loved it there. So just tell us all about it.
South Carolina is where I proved to myself that I was a good nurse. You know, it's a thought that's always in the back of your mind. It's like being a mom. Well, if you question if you're a good mom, you're probably a good mom. My patients were incredibly sick. We had vents and trachs, G tubes, where patients are dependent on everything other than their own bodies. And that was a first experience from going from neurology, where patients are up and walking, to bedbound patients. And we were so incredibly short-staffed that these patients wouldn't get baths because we don't have the staff for it. And as people in our world keep getting larger, it gets harder and harder to turn people. But I will ever and forever appreciate South Carolina for turning me into the nurse that I am. There's things that I won't forget. I won't forget how to take care of a ventilated patient with a trach, or mess up tube feedings and make sure that I know how to clean a line out. I can place an IV on most anybody, which I'm very proud of. And it was a great experience. But Texas was where I really fell in love with the surrounding area. Columbia, South Carolina, I didn't have that much fun. It was a college town, so it wasn't Courtney or my own team. But Texas has the Cowboys and the dancing, which I absolutely love to do. So
wait a minute, I didn't know about the Cowboys, so that might have to be a separate conversation.
Is fun. The people at the hospital, it was a Baylor Scott and White Medical Center, and Baylor is a very well-known university down there. So they had more money than what South Carolina had, and they had more resources. The people were fantastic and always willing to help and always in a great mood. I would go back in a heartbeat.
That is great. That is great. And you and your friend were able to share housing at each of those locations. And, you know, so this is something that maybe somebody who's thinking about doing traveling nursing, if they're a nurse right now, or maybe they're going to school right now to become a nurse, and this is an idea that they have. I mean, you get to go and test out the place that you might want to end up permanently. And so you can see if it's something that you enjoy. Do you know what the statistics are for being hired on permanently after a traveling opportunity, or is there some kind of a contractual rule about you can't hire a traveling nurse full-time permanent, you know, until a specific amount of time has gone by, or how does that work?
Most of the time, because of the shortage nationwide, everybody's hiring nurses. If they can get a nurse, they're going to get a nurse. It's more the individual nurse's choice. If that's a hospital that she's willing to work in those conditions. And then you're making a significant pay cut when you go back to staffing. I truly believe that nurses should be making what travel nurses are making, with everything that the nursing field and medical field has had to go through. We need those people. But I know that if there are nurses who have gone from contracts to being stationary, that's a very good sign that you're in a healthy hospital that promotes the wellness of its nurses.
Right. Right. And I mean, there are some significant advantages to being part of the permanent staff at a
Absolutely.
hospital. You have, paid leave, you have, retirement opportunities through, 401k plans, and you have other perks for being a full-time employee. And, so there are a lot of things that would make a person choose that, and stability, just because they're going to be there. They're going to be there to raise their family or whatever. But the traveling nurse is really a great opportunity. So did you work through a traveling nurse company where you were an employee for them, or were you an independent contractor, or how does
I
that work?
worked, I worked through a company. They have both. Plenty of my friends are traveling nurses. They're in my class. Usually people go through a contracted company because you have the opportunity to get healthcare.
Ah,
It's very expensive and not worth it. I got to be lucky and I'm young enough that I can still be on my parents' insurance.
right. Right.
um, but the hard thing about traveling nursing, if you go independent, is that you have to have private healthcare as well.
Right.
And it's a lot more expensive than going with that.
Yes. It's a lot more expensive, and it doesn't cover things like a group plan would. So for sure. I know that you said that you are going to continue nursing for a little while, and then you're going to go back to school.
Yes.
Before you have a family of your own, you want to, as much as you may or may not want to say it, follow in your father's footsteps, who's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And everybody loves him. So you're going to be a nurse practitioner. And I didn't realize until you told me before I hit the record button that there's doctorate programs in nurse practitioner. And so tell me what you think, and we'll have a record of this so that when you finish with your nurse practitioner degree, you can go back and say, that's what I was thinking all those years ago. What do you think you would like to do with it? Would you like to be in the neurology field, in family practice, in women's health, or, is there a particular area that you would like to maybe specialize in?
As I get more experience across the field, it's kind of hard to make that decision. I see what my dad does every day, and I think I have the same heart for pediatrics that he does. I just haven't had the opportunity to work in it. Being a family nurse practitioner allows me to work back in the community that I grew up in, but I also have a love for neurology and change. So I'm not dead set on family nurse practitioner, and I probably wouldn't be dead set on women's health, but it would be encompassed in my practice. That's
Right,
what I'm thinking right now.
right. Well, that's great. If you were able to talk with someone who was just now entering nursing school, or they were putting in their applications to go to nursing school, because it took you a little bit of time, you took a couple of beats before you went to nursing school, is there any advice that you would like to give to someone? We have about 2 minutes left. So is there any word of wisdom from Breslin Rose that you would like to share?
Study. It takes a whole different direction than high school took me. It was a breeze in high school, and nursing school is the hardest thing that you'll go through if you're a nurse. So study.
Right, right. Well, it weeds people out, because so many of the nursing programs I know that my friends have gone to, they'll say, if you start with 20 people in a class, you're going to be down to 10
Yes.
in a very short period of time, because people just can't hack it. And
Right.
that is one of the reasons that I feel like nurses as well should be compensated more than what they are. And there's a place and a purpose for everyone in the medical field, but nurses carry so many things on their shoulders. And I love that there are so many male nurses now.
Me too.
That is so great, because you want to have people from all different categories, caring for people, so that the people and the family members can talk to people that they can relate to better. And sometimes people have more comfort level talking to a male nurse than a female nurse, and vice versa. But I think it's so great that you found your passion as much as you were against this passion, you opened yourself up. And I think that that is really the underlying message that I hope people hear from this, is that you got to stay open. You got to stay open and look at all the options. Don't try to be what somebody else wants you to be or what you think you're supposed to be. Let yourself be who you were meant to be. And I think you've done that. And you have so many years ahead of you to continue with that. If somebody wants to reach out to you personally and just get a little bit more of your information, you told me that we should share your Facebook and Instagram, but if you want to go ahead and say those on here, I'll put it in the text below as well.
On Instagram, I'm Breslin with the little symbol. Rose is my last name. I think if you do a search, it's Breslin Rose. And Facebook is Breslin Rose as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Breslin. And you are just a little light, a doll, and I wish that your computer camera would let it be seen. All right.
Thank you.